We often get Brian Nankervis on Nightline because he's a bit of an expert on Luna Park and the history of Luna Park, and a new television show called Pictures of You, which has taken off very successfully.
Yes, he hosts that, and look, I must admit, and I shouldn't admit this publicly, but whilst you and Phil were on air when the last series was on, during the news break, I'd sneak the audio up and have a look at it on the tally.
That's terribly disloyal.
Oh, it is.
It's so disloyal and hurtful. It breaks my heart. It makes me feel as though I want to boot you from the seventh story.
But I must say that it's disloyal to Gary McQuaid, who reads the news, because I'm not paying attention.
Gary McQuaid.
Well, that's when I listen. That's when I watched Pictures of You.
Concentrate on radio, would you?
Oh, but you guys know what you're doing. You don't need my help. I'm just there as a button man.
I just find it very disloyal and very hurtful, and it'll come down and back and bite you on the backside in no uncertain manner. Well, I will.
I'm sorry, but Brian Nankervis is such an immense talent, and I've been working with you and Phil, who are also immense talents, but I've had 20 years of you two.
Brian Nankervis did Spicks and Specks. Did he? No, he didn't.
No,
What was that one?
What? Brian's about to tell us.
What did he do?
Yes. Let me tell you, Bruce, Simon knows, but Bruce is a little foggy. It was Rock Quiz.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they all blend in.
Well, in fact, not was, is. We're just currently recording our 10th series.
Now, Brian, we're talking about first records, that you had the independence to go down to Coles variety store and buy your first record. What was it for you?
Well, for me, I actually joined a record club.
Oh.
The Australian Record Club.
Oh.
They used to advertise, I think, in the back of my mother's Woman's Weekly.
Yes, they did.
Do you remember? And they had hundreds of little photos of hundreds of the albums, and I would pore over those photos. So I finally joined, and I received, for my troubles, the best of the Who, with, I think, pictures of Lily and My Generation. I received the 1966 Bob Dylan album, Highway 61 Revisited, and the soundtrack to Mrs. Robinson, The Graduate.
Oh, The Graduate,
yes.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Now, do you remember, was that one of those, because I used to see the magazines advertising those as well, and I thought it was a great way to get them, but yeah, it was in double day books or something, wasn't it, or am I thinking of a different one?
I think you might be thinking of a different one. These albums were, I think there was a record club, perhaps the World Record Club.
Remember the Reader's Digest record club?
Yeah, there might have been the Reader's Digest, where they weren't really the original albums, but the beauty of the Australian Record Club, you got the original album.
And then there was the Hammered recordings. Remember that?
Oh, they're the ones where they do the week covers. Yeah, they'd say, all the top hits of 1985, and you get it. And they were done by some awful mob.
No, that wasn't that. So that's how I fell in love with Bob Dylan.
So you had a very middle-of-the-road love of music, didn't you?
I had a
middle-of-the-road love. It wasn't desperate rock and roll, like heavy.
Well, that album of Bob Dylan is pretty adventurous, like a Rolling Stone, and the Who, for miles.
Yeah, but it wasn't spit in your gravy or anything like that.
Well, I don't think anyone was spitting in the gravy in 1971.
We've got a soundtrack from Pictures of You.
Yes. Just before we get to that, one question on the albums you bought. Did you ever see The Who or Bob Dylan or Simon and Garfunkel in concert?
I've seen all of them.
Really?
Unfortunately, I didn't see The Who with original members Keith Moon and John Entwistle, but no, I saw them in 2004 at the High Sense Arena, and they were incredible. Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend. I've seen Bob Dylan, I reckon, about a dozen times. I met Bob Dylan.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Did he speak in a monotone and all out of tune?
Absolutely. I talked my way into a hotel room, Irvin Rockman's Regency. He was being interviewed, and I had been dispatched by the producer of the interview show to word up the journalist who my friend feared knew nothing about Bob Dylan, and knew that he had a reputation for eating journalists alive.
Oh.
So I had a chat with him and lunch, and we talked, and at the end of the lunch he said, "Man, you're a big fan. I think I'm going to need someone to carry my bags." So I went and I stood next to the doorway, so I knew that Dylan would have to walk past me to get out, and as he passed, I put my hand out. All I could manage was thanks, and all he decided to give me was, yeah.
That's funny. Now,
It sort of made sense.
Now, Bruce was alluding to, I've actually lifted the audio. I was so moved in that episode of Pictures of You that you host, where Arn Doe was on chatting to you and looking through the pictures from his life.
Wasn't it remarkable?
It was incredible. He's a funny guy, and he makes me laugh. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he told a fabulous story about his dad. How did you feel when he told that story?
Well, look, you know, when we do the research and we know the photos that are coming up, and we've had someone interview the guests, so we roughly know where the photos can take us. But and so I suppose I knew the father photo. I'd done some research, but I didn't realise that he would be that affected.
Yeah.
And it's palpable. You can see him on the TV. He's struggling to maintain control.
Well, we've got that here.
Yes, I've got the audio. Bruce hasn't heard this
No,
yet,
I want to hear it.
I thought I'd drag that out so we could play it, so Bruce could experience it too.
So, in doing so, we thank you, Brian Nankervis. Continued success with Pictures of You, and thank you for telling us about your early recordings and the purchase of same.
It's always a pleasure to be on with you boys. Thank you very much.
Good on you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.